Today I'm sharing my favorite tomato varieties that I grew in my garden for round 1 of tomato growing season here in southern Arizona. Don't forget that if you missed your chance this spring for planting tomatoes and peppers and chilies, you get another chance coming up in mid-July and August. So if you like the looks of any of these seed varieties that I share with you today, definitely give them a try in your garden coming up soon. Before I begin, I want to remind you of the most important thing you can consider when selecting tomato varieties for your own garden: days to maturity. You want to choose a tomato that has a shorter number of days to maturity. Between 60 and 80 days is a really good window. Tomato pollen isn't viable much above 90 degrees, and so what happens during the heat of summer is that those tomato blooms are going to drop without setting fruit. If you want to have fruit on your tomatoes, you have an opportunity to plant them early in the spring, and then again in mid-July to August for a second harvest. By the time those tomato seedlings are big enough to start setting fruit, those temperatures are going to have cooled off enough for that pollen to become viable again. All right, let's get to the varieties. I'm going to start with cherry tomatoes and I'm going to work my way up to the larger tomatoes. The first variety that I want to talk about is the Lozano tomato. This is an F1 hybrid and I love the versatility of the Lozano. You can grow it in a pot, you can grow it in a raised bed, or you can grow it in ground. So if you're gardening in a small space, Lozano is a great choice. I grew the Lozano in ground and it is happily sprawling and producing lots of fruit with no support at all. In August, I'm going to try it in my raised bed garden to see how it does there. The next tomato I want to talk about is the Red Robin F1 hybrid. This tomato has a minimum number of days to maturity at 55 days, which is really fast. I trialed this tomato in my indoor gardening experiment this past winter. If you want to check that video out, you can look at the link here, or I will put the link in the description box below, and you can check out all of my indoor gardening videos from this winter. Once I was finished with my indoor gardening experiment, I moved the Red Robin outside into this 5-foot long stock tank that you see behind me. It not only doubled in size, but it started producing fruit again, and they were even better out here than it was indoors. You could put the Red Robin in a container, in a pot on your patio. You could put it in a raised bed like this. I imagine you could even put it in ground because it has been doing so well outside, and I haven't had this covered at all. It has just been powering through these sizzling June days without any problem, without any shade cloth. So I highly recommend this one, not to mention the fact that its flavor is absolutely delicious. Very sweet, very classic tomato. It's got round, red cherry tomatoes. I'm still in my stock tank garden and I'm still talking about small tomatoes that I've planted in these stock tanks, but each one that I've mentioned so far, as well as the one I'm about to mention, would do equally well in a pot on your patio or even in your in-ground garden. These little guys that you see behind me are the orange hat variety. I got these seeds from Baker Creek, and they are by far the smallest tomato plant of any of the varieties that I'm going to talk about today, and in fact the smallest tomato plant I've ever personally grown. It has a minimum number of days to maturity at 60 days, which is still really good. It will only grow to about 9 inches tall. In this 4-foot stock tank, I got 12 plants, and they produced so many tomatoes I could hardly keep up. Don't let the small size trick you. It is going to produce the sweetest, most delicious, cute, orange, round tomatoes you've ever seen. If you like sun gold tomatoes, you're gonna love this tomato. And if you're looking for a tomato that will be really productive on your patio, this is the one for you. Orange hat is definitely gonna be on my repeat list come mid-July to August. I'm going to replant one of these tubs with this orange hat variety and see how many I can get then. The next tomato variety that I want to talk about is the Berry's Crazy Cherry. This tomato behind me, as you can see, is much bigger than the other varieties I've already talked about. If you plant it in a raised bed, in ground, or even in a container, as long as you have support, it's going to do just fine. This has turned out to be one of my very favorites, and I'm definitely going to include it in the next round of tomatoes. The days to maturity on Berry's Crazy Cherry is about 75 days, which isn't too bad. You will get huge clusters of pale yellow tomato fruits. At first, I wasn't even sure if they were ripe until I picked one, and it was so good. It's not as sweet as some of the other varieties that I've grown, but it's got a really beautiful savory tomato flavor that I love. If you want a high producer of really good quality cherry tomatoes, this is a good choice. All right, this is the last stop in my stock tank garden, and then we're going to move out to my in-ground section. This tomato behind me is the Torrangina F1 hybrid. If you love sun gold tomatoes, you're going to love this one. Torrangina produces long clusters of orange, round, very sweet fruit, and it did really well in the heat for me. Days to maturity on Torrangina are 55 days. It does get a little taller than it is described as in the seed catalogs. It says that it is a smaller container type variety, but I think this plant probably got to about 4 feet tall. I grew this variety last year in my garden and it also got very tall then. However, I think that if you provide support for it and you have a big enough pot to support the root system, it's going to be just fine, either in a container, a raised bed, or in ground. As I said before, I grew this last season and it will always be on my tomato must grow list. I have been trying to dodge the storms all afternoon to try to make this video in 5 and 10 minute segments. We keep getting rained on, which is absolutely amazing. If you're a resident of Southern Arizona or used to be a resident of Southern Arizona, you know the magic that is monsoon season. So I have no complaints. However, if this video seems a little discombobulated, it's because I'm dodging clouds. But now I'm back. So let's talk about the next tomato on my favorites list for the season, and that is the Apricot Zebra. It has the maturity date of 65 days, which is still really good in that shorter window of time that we want to look for. Some people say apricot. I say apricot because I grew up in southwestern Ohio and we say apricot there. So tomato, right? So I am going to continue with saying apricot. I caught myself and I was going to correct myself, but I say apricot, so I'm not going to correct myself. This is the first time I've grown Apricot Zebra. It is on the smaller side. It's probably about 36 inches tall. Definitely small enough to grow in a raised bed or a container or in the ground. I grew this in one of my longer in-ground beds and it's under the shade of some sunflowers. I was alternating trials between sunflowers and shade cloth for shade for some of my plants this year, and so far the Apricot Zebra seems to be doing really well underneath the shade of the sunflower canopy, which is really beautiful too. These are a golf ball size or an apricot colored little cocktail sized tomato. It starts out as a really pretty green with dark green stripes, and then as it matures it becomes this orange color, and it retains some of its stripes, although most of the stripes will turn a lighter yellow. So you're going to have an apricot or orange colored tomato with some lighter yellow striping. It's very pretty. I tasted it and it is very sweet, tomatoey, but sweet, and I just absolutely love it. This one plant right here has probably got about 25 fruits on it, so that's not too bad. And I've actually got 3 of these plants, and one of them has more fruit than that, and they seem to be going strong. They're still putting on blooms, although I don't think they're setting any more fruit right now, just because it's been in the 100s and it's much too hot for the tomatoes to be setting fruit, like I explained earlier. But very happy with this one, including it in my monsoon garden. I've already got the seeds sown in my house, and those transplants are going to be going out very soon. I want to add with the Apricot Zebra that you probably will want to add support for this one because it's tall enough at around 36 inches that it definitely needs support. The way that it grows, it's got pretty fine branches, kind of willowy, I would say. I'm not sure what the proper term for that would be, but you know, some tomatoes can be pretty thick stemmed. This one is very fine, and so it needs the support. I put a basket around this one, and it seems to be doing really well just being able to rest against the basket. So I would highly recommend some support wherever you plant it. I'm moving on to the medium-sized tomato category, and I know I thought I was done on my stock tank area, but here I am again. I forgot that I had this one growing over here. Behind me is the Tidy Rose tomato. It is a pink, smaller beefsteak style tomato. Each one probably weighs about 10 ounces, and so it is definitely on the smaller side. Most of them don't suffer from the cat facing that a lot of beefsteak tomatoes do, although I have had a few that had it. These are sweet and meaty and delicious. If you're looking for a good sandwich tomato that has very low seeds and a lot of really nice meaty fruit, this is the one for you. I got the Tidy Rose as part of some seed samples that I got a few years ago, and I have grown this probably for 3 seasons. And I know that I'm saying this about all of them, but I think I will probably always grow the Tidy Rose tomato. If you have a smaller space, a smaller in-ground garden, a raised bed garden, or a container garden, this is a great choice for a larger sized tomato. It's not huge, but just a little bit bigger than, say, a cocktail size. I Googled tidy rows online just to see if I could find some seeds available, and I did find them from several companies. So all you need to do is Google and choose the company that you want to order from. The tidy rows has been super healthy for me. I haven't had any problems or health issues with it. However, it does need to have some shade cloth. So if you can see this behind me, I've got tomato baskets for support. Those are necessary. And I have shade cloth because I did have a problem with it getting sunburned. I forgot to mention when I was talking about all of the cherry tomatoes that I was growing in my stock tank garden that I have not covered any of them with shade cloth. They have been doing really well. And the sun here in southern Arizona is no joke. It's really intense, and there are a lot of tomatoes that require cover, but so far all of these cocktail and cherry sized tomatoes that I've talked about have been really good even without the shade. Have you ever had a friend who was kind of annoying, very high maintenance, and yet so amazing that you couldn't help but be friends with them? Well, that is my relationship with this next tomato, and that is the speckled Roman. This is a Roma style indeterminate tomato. It gets fairly large. It's about 4 feet tall. I've got it in an in-ground bed, and this tomato produces really large Roma tomatoes. I weighed one in the house just so that I could tell you how much it weighed, and it is about 5 ounces. When you pick up one of these tomatoes, you can feel the weight of it in your hand. They're meaty and they're juicy and they're sweet, and they've got a rich flavor that I think is not topped by any tomato in this garden. I would highly, highly recommend trying it out, even though it is high maintenance. This plant is fairly productive. I've gotten 5 or 6 fruit off of each one of these so far, and there are still some small fruits on that are working on ripening up. Now, it hasn't been setting any more new fruit because, as I said before, it's gotten a little too hot. But now let's talk about the flaws. This tomato is one of my favorites in flavor, and yet it has flaws that I hate to admit. First of all, it is very prone to blossom and drought. If you don't keep up on the calcium content of your soil and keep up on your watering, this tomato is going to let you know right away. I haven't had any problems with blossom and drought with any other tomato in my garden, and I am growing several larger varieties, but this tomato always gets blossom and drought. So I have to keep up on the watering for sure, and I have to make sure my soil is healthy, or else I am not going to get tomatoes from this plant. The other thing about this tomato plant is that the leaf hoppers love the striped Roman tomato. They adore striped Roman tomatoes as much as I do. I have had to treat these plants several times. I've got 3 plants, and I've had to treat them several times over the season for leaf hoppers and all of the assorted things that come with leaf hoppers. So you are definitely going to have to keep on your watering, on your soil, and on your pest patrol if you grow a striped Roman tomato. I know I've talked a lot about its flaws, but the quality of the fruit of a striped Roman tomato is unmatched in my opinion. I've never grown a tomato that's as good as it. You can do sauces, pastes, stews, you can freeze it, you can eat it raw. There's nothing you can't do with this tomato, so definitely give the striped Roman a try. One more thing I want to mention about the striped Roman tomato is the days to maturity. It's 85 days, so that's definitely on the much longer end of the range than we've talked about for any of the others. But if you start it early, you can definitely get this tomato to produce fruit before it gets too hot. All right, we've got 2 tomatoes left, and I am saving the best for last, so definitely stay tuned until the end. The second to last tomato is the black Krim. This tomato is on the longer side as well at 70 to 90 days. So you're going to find that most of the large tomatoes will be much longer on the days to maturity than, say, the cherry, the cocktail, or somewhere in between. So if you want a large tomato in your garden, you're going to have to start it early. I started all of my tomatoes, not just my large ones, about a month early out in my garden. I planted the seeds in December. I had them in the ground by February, and I kept them free from frost by using a product called Walls of Water. water. There are these plastic, like accordion type rings that you fill with water. They sit down around your plant. The water insulates them. I also put a frost cloth over the top so that no cold air could get down into the walls of water, and that really helped my tomatoes get a head start. I'm just now getting my fruits. They're beautiful purplish red color, about the size of a navel orange, and they have excellent flavor, very juicy. If you want a tomato sandwich, I would recommend putting the black creme on it. I haven't had any trouble with pests. I haven't had any trouble with blossom end rot. It is just heavy with green fruits that I am so looking forward to harvesting. This is the first year that I've grown this tomato, but it is going on my keeper list too, which is getting quite long. I have had some problems with the black creme cracking. It's prone to cracking, and yet the flavor is so good that I feel like it's worth dealing with in order to get such a delicious tomato. I have saved the very best tomato for last. This is the Punta Banda tomato, and this is a tomato that I will always grow. It's my very favorite, not because of the size, not necessarily because it has the very best flavor, but because of its performance and its productivity. I haven't had any problems with diseases or pests on this tomato. It powers through the hottest of days. It keeps producing, I don't know how, and it is loaded with tomatoes like bulbs on a Christmas tree. The days to maturity for the Punta Banda is 65 days. It produces a round, red, cocktail-sized tomato. The flavor is very good, but it's not the best tomato I've ever tasted. But since it produces so much, I cannot help but grow it. It likes to sprawl. All of these vines behind me are all of the Punta Bandas. I grew 4 tomato plants this year in this little bed, and it just kind of likes to tumble. And it actually works out really well because it keeps all of its fruits kind of underneath itself, and so they get shaded from the sun by all the foliage on the plant. When I go to harvest them, I have to lift those branches up gently so that I can harvest the fruit from underneath. I do lose some fruits to a little bit of rot because some of the ripe ones, where they touch the ground where it's damp, they do get a little bit rotten, but this plant produces so many fruits that the loss is insignificant. I have some big mixing bowls, and every other day I have been harvesting a full mixing bowl full of these Punta Bandas. Last year, after the heat of June and July subsided, I pruned them back really hard, and they just came right back and they produced a second crop. They are just absolutely amazing. You can save the seeds from them. I've been saving seeds from these plants for 3 years, and so far I've had no trouble with that. They've turned out perfectly. I got my seeds from Native Seed Search in Tucson. I noticed that they aren't carrying those seeds on their website this season. It's fairly normal for them not to carry certain things in certain seasons because if their seed stock gets low, they will usually pull them off the website, do a grow out so they can replenish their supply. So don't worry, I'm sure they'll have them back again soon. I did do some Googling around, and I found them available on several other sites for sale, so you can just Google them and choose the supplier you'd like to order from. I will put links to the seed varieties I used in the description box below where available. You have a second chance at a warm season garden coming up very soon. If you get your seeds planted right away indoors, you should have time to transplant out in mid-July and August. I really hope that you try some of the varieties that I shared with you today, and if you do, I would love to hear your thoughts on how they turned out for you. I already have new seed selections for my second chance summer garden coming up in the next couple of months, and I cannot wait to share those with you. Until next time, happy gardening.